The first and most important thing, in my opinion, in this section is to make... Hello everyone, I'm a structural engineer working in the UK in the design of buildings for over 10 years, and I passed my IStructE exam a few years ago. Today basically I will be going through the method statement section of the 2023 February exam for the IStructE. The first and most important thing, in my opinion, in this section is to make sure that you do not spend too much time in this section, because the marks that you get for this section are not so much for the overall score of the exam. So if we start with the preliminary works and mobilization, I think it's important to mention at the beginning that you need to develop a site waste management plan. And probably because of the emphasis that has been given lately to the importance of reducing carbon, probably also mention the develop the site waste management plan and recycling plan, or management, waste recycling and management plan, for example. So it's important to mention in the beginning, and even more important, I think, to also mention it at the end of the method statement. Then after you have mentioned that you start with the preliminary works and mobilization, you start with the groundworks and foundations. Following the groundworks and foundation, you go to the superstructure. One important note that I wrote in here is the template that I was using for this method statement, for example, shows different lines that are applicable to different structures. And what I do is that I use that template to make sure that I get the basic or the basis of the method statement. And then to that template, I start adding on top of those basic things the important things that are more related to this structure. I think another key point to remember during the method statement is to highlight the key elements of the superstructure. Basically, those elements that you did your detailed calculations for, it's important to highlight them in the method statement, because if you just put a general method statement, it doesn't, it just shows like, well, you just took the template and copy and pasted. In this case, for example, I talk about the roof trusses. So I'm talking about, well, you need to install the roof trusses before you actually install or start on site with the cantilever structure. And the second key element that I mentioned is the hangers. So once the roof structure has been installed, then you can install the hangers. And once you have the hangers, is that you install then the floor, cantilever floor underneath in the conference hall. So everything else, if you notice in the method statement, is pretty basic and also very repetitive. Something that it's typical and repeated in most of the construction sites. However, make sure that you mention those few things, like the roof trusses in this case, and the hangers, which are the primary elements. After I talk about the superstructure, then I tend to talk about the ground floor slab. And the reason is because, well, to put the ground floor slab and make sure that it's to correct specifications and quality, you most of the times need a surface to cover from the elements, the ground floor slab. So that's the reason why I put it at this stage. Another thing that I added specifically for this project is the facade fitting out. Always add the section facade fitting out, but then make it more specific to the type of building or the type of cladding they're using in the building. In this case, for example, you have a combination of brickwork and glazing. So what I'm going to do is mention the glazing in here, making sure that I mention the brickwork, but that I also mention the glazing afterwards, because at the ground level, I believe there was a 70% area that was going to be glazed. And the final section of the method statement is the waste removal and the site clearance. Now, as I mentioned before, it's very important to refer to the waste management system that you put originally or in the beginning of your method statement, and will be found very useful and will be valued positively by whoever is reviewing your exam if you take into account the recycling or reuse of materials. So it's just to mention that once you're clearing on site, you make sure that you follow the recycling procedures or reusing procedures that are established in the waste management or in the clearance management of the building. Now, in this exam, because it's from 2023, we had to do a program, which basically is a Gantt chart that you have to create, an approximate Gantt chart with how long you expect the project will take. I believe now in 2024 and in 2025, the exam will not require you to do a program, but because it was an exam in 2023, then I completed this section. I start by just adding the activities on the left, and then just a number of weeks normally, and then in about 42 or 52, basically almost a year or just under a year. That's more or less my experience. Well, I have found that this type of projects in the exam tend to last. If you think it's going to take longer, of course, make it longer. So in the activities, I then create subsections, which are first the site setup, then the substructure, then the superstructure, and finally the site clearance. And if you see, it basically follows more or less the same pattern or the same subtitles as the method statement. Now I start drawing the length of the subtitle of each subsection first. And in this case, I just took the length that I had from one of the templates and I drew it there. Then I start to fill each activity with the length or number of weeks that I think it will take. And depending on the length that I think it will take, I will then modify the overall length of the subsection. For example, here, after I put the ground floor slab, I noticed the superstructure is not going to take as long as I thought it would take originally. And that's the end of this section and the final video for the exam 2023 February. So I hope it has been useful, all these videos for the 2023 February exam. And what I'll do is I'll carry on making videos of the exam after this date. So the next one I'm going to do is one in 2024. I'll do those in 2024 so I can include the calculations for the embodied carbon of the design.